during this very challenging time where we had to be forced to be separate from our friends and our colleagues, I was really grateful for this Anchor app, which has allowed me to continue the podcast after almost 1 year of working on it. It's free. You simply go to anchor.fm and download the app. And there you'll find all the tools that you need to record and edit your podcast, as well as to invite people onto your podcast through the app. Anchor also distributes the podcast for you on Apple, Spotify, and many other platforms. You have absolutely nothing to do except to record your podcast. If you have an ad like this, you can also make money. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. I would recommend it for anyone who wants to get their voice out there, has something to contribute. Go for it. Anchor.fm is where you go to download the free app and to get started. Good luck with your podcast. Welcome to the Bees and Honey podcast. Today we're speaking with artist John Simon Jr. and his exhibition is in New York City until the first week of November at the David Richard Gallery. Please enjoy this amazing interview. I had so much fun speaking with John, and I hope you enjoy hearing him talk about his work as well. Hi, John.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. So you just came back from shopping? You said you did some shopping earlier?
Yeah, my daughter is turning 13.
Nice. I didn't realize your daughter was that young still.
Hang on a second. I'm trying to get this mic adjusted.
Okay. I can hear you very well. It should be fine.
Yeah, that's better. I can hear you better now.
Okay, good. So you've been busy since the last time we met with artist Yuri Dotan. We saw your work at the Whitney. Do you want to start off by telling us a little bit about that work that was installed last year?
Sure. That work was installed, for 2019.
Mm-hmm.
And the work was made in 1999.
Wow.
And the Whitney bought it that year
Mm-hmm.
and kept it in storage for almost 20 years. Before they had a show and put it in the show, they had me come to the archives there where they keep the work. They had brought it out and we had to turn it on. It's a laptop computer, an early Apple Duodock 280C computer. It was taken apart and reassembled on a plastic housing.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't know if it would work or not after 20 years, but it started up like a champ and ran beautifully the whole show.
Wow. Well, all I can say is those apples were probably made to last more than our current iPhones.
Yeah, it's a tank, that computer. We made an edition of 12 of the software artworks.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a computer and the software that I wrote, and it was, a little framed screen on the wall, which was unusual in those days to see a flat screen anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a collector who bought one and put it in her house, and she told me that she loved to see in the morning when she came in to see it running, and she left it running, and it ran for 17 years.
Amazing.
And then she sent it back when it was a problem, and we fixed it, and it's running still. The running now.
Amazing. So tell me, that was in 1999. So by that time, how long had you been working on this style of art with technology, or how would you describe it? How did you get into this?
Yeah, I was working with technology, digital photography from the very beginning. As an undergraduate, I worked for a geology department that was using satellites, to do imaging, and they had access to satellites. Mars. Those were the first digital cameras that were used that way, and so I understood about processing pixels and writing little pieces of software to process images. That was probably be 83 or 84, something like that, when I started in that. And then I went and pursued that up to a graduate level, looking at all sorts of digital imaging applications.
Mm-hmm.
And then I switched to School of Visual Arts, who had just started in 1987 a computer art-based MFA program, and I went through the program and started
Mm-hmm.
teaching. Yeah, so I was working with technology that whole time.
Right. And you're still teaching somewhat.
Yeah, I teach online mostly now, and I have a little community built up around the book that I wrote, and so I do classes weekly, and I do workshops and just various gigs in universities. I'm giving a talk this week at University of Utah, so wherever. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead. Wherever.
Yeah, University of Utah, and I'll give another talk at SVA the following week. So yeah, I do speaking and workshops online, and I was doing online teaching for a long time, and now it's very popular.
Yes, yes. But tell us about the book, because that's a kind of analog, if you think of it.
Right. Well, I'll give you the connection to technology. So I was writing all this software that was I saw it as a kind of artwork, and the computer, because it's software art and not video art, it creates the image as you see it. So it's not a pre-recorded set of frames that loop and play over and over again. It's computing the image every moment. It's making something from what happened before and lots of variables, and it's always changing. So the piece never repeats itself, and it's always sort of exploring new visual territory. So I thought, how far can I go with this? How could I write a computer program that just is creative, like an artist, is constantly coming up with new things, like outside the bounds of what's programmed. So I looked at lots and lots of computer algorithms, and I even tried them. And some of my early pieces, like studies, explore this concept to look for emergent behavior and to look for ways that the software, the whole idea of artificial intelligence, could we make an artificial intelligence that was creative? And there were a lot of barriers to that. There's still a lot of barriers to that. So I thought, well, if I can't get to it from what's known about computer science, maybe I can just look into myself, and I could just try to examine how I create. I wanted to deeply understand how I'm a creative person. Like, where do my ideas come from? Why do I feel like I want to make stuff? And I went further and further in this introspection until I had some kinds of breakthroughs and didn't know what was going on. And the answer started to come from some meditation teachers that I found. And so drawing, being engaged in drawing, in that flow of creative work that you might get in playing music or in sports, or I get when I'm really into a drawing, really into a painting, that can be a meditative state if you use the right, kind of insight technique, which is, to look where it's coming from, look for the source of that creativity.
Amazing. Yeah. I love hearing that. That just made my day. I had a good day so far, but it made my day even more. So now fast forward to the present, and how did you get to this Drawing Air exhibition, to this body of work, and what does the Drawing Air signify?
Well, I had a exhibition 2010 at Sandra Gehring called Inner Whole, and the breakthrough there was this meditative breakthrough that I'm talking about, this kind of recognition of no self, etc. And so I continued that line of work, and I continue to do a daily drawing practice, which is a meditative practice, and I watch it evolve. I don't decide what it's going to be ahead of time. It grows. And so when I'm ready to do a show, or I feel like I want to make a larger body of work, I look for the symbols and the images that are persistent in that kind of always come up, and try to take those, and then I digitize them. I extrude them in 3D with some software, and then I have a robotic carving machine that goes back, carve out the sort of sculptural forms, and then I paint them, etc. So I was working away on that, evolving this kind of open cycle drawing that I had been making persistently for a year or so. And I have the site online, iClock.com, and that's where I post them all. And so I just look through that site. There are thousands of drawings already on that site from 2008. I post one every day, and I pick from there. Yeah. So I choose drawings from there when I want to make larger works, because that's sort of the diary, the history of my work kind of going on there. And I threw that all the way around to the spring, and the show was supposed to be April 30th, 2020. Well, everything was closed. Everything had been closed down, and that show had to get postponed.
Yeah.
And so I had all the work, and I sort of, there was a consistent body of work, but I also had a feeling that it hadn't been capped off, and I was still almost finished with it. And there's always a moment in the body of work when it kind of like deeper meaning or more open meaning comes to you. Still happen. And then when the pandemic happened and we got shut down, I had wanted to write a piece of software, a new piece of software for that show. And because I was so busy making these things and they take forever to make, that I hadn't written it. And then I found myself, with like everybody, with 2 or 3 months, or we didn't know how long it would be, time at home, just kind of open time. And I had most of the work done for the show. So I started on the software, and I found some forms in the design of the software that mimicked the forms that I had on the wall. And then at one point they looked like a pair of lungs on this big black rectangle. And I thought to myself, I'm responding to what's happening around us. I was responding to being shut in and the worry about the sickness and the amount it affects your breathing, etc. But at the same time, I was drawing these drawings, and I was looking at how they're being drawn on the screen, all the lines, and I thought how ephemeral, because the software changes all the time and it's never the same. And so drawing air has this sense that you're drawing. When you draw on the screen, you're drawing in air. It's like disappearing all the time, as if you're like smoke going up. So that was one meaning of it. And the other is drawing air is another way of saying breathing in, when you draw air into your lungs. And these signs look like lungs. So that seemed good. And then I look back at the forms in the show, these open cycles, and they were not quite circles. They were open in a way they were drawing in like the wall, and they were drawing your eye into the center of themselves. So it seemed to resonate very well, and it seemed to tie the whole show together.
Yes. And I mean, at some level, those lungs are also trees. And
that's right.
I mean, and it goes even deeper. I mean, now that I know about this whole meditation stuff that I didn't know about your history before, I see a lot of like geometric, this sort of sacred geometry coming out near the end of the video as well. I mean, it's amazing what you were able to tap into. Yeah,
I like to think about multiple simultaneous threads. That's often why my work looks like a lot of different things, because I think what I like is to work in ways that I'm intuitively drawn to and passionate about, and not really regard the history of what I've done, but really go with where my interest is, and then find the ways that it ties in, because you really can't make work that's not about you if you're following your interests. So somewhere or other, there's going to be a connection, and I think it's so interesting when you get out on one limb and then, you look back and you see how it connects to another. And of course you do in the trees, and the whole drawing air software is based on a simple recursive tree algorithm. And I realized there's a very strong connection between trees and lungs as well.
Absolutely. So tell us about the sculptures. I know you said they're based on your drawings, but then they become 3D and they're still on the wall. So how are these artworks originate separate from the video?
Yeah, so like I say, I look for persistence. That's what I think, because there's a lot of sort of, I think, subconscious element about when you draw freely, when you draw improvisationally, it gives the non-verbal parts of your brain ability to speak if you just really let it go. And that's part of the meditation and mindfulness practice, is allowing my thought mind to quiet down enough to let my hand go and not worry about, I'm just scribbling, this is nonsense. And all those thoughts can kind of go away. And I can just go with it, go with the feeling and draw these things. And then in all those drawings, some forms persist, and I see the persistent forms, and then I say, okay, this one is in a shape and a size that might work well, and then I scan it and I outline it in Adobe Illustrator, and then I go to a software called Rhino 3D and I extrude it, and then it's not a drawing anymore, and then I have a lot of freedom to create the shape of it, the edges of it, the depth of it. I have a lot of freedom there to kind of sculpt it in the 3D model. And so I do interpret it that way. And in the little online catalog for the show, you can see the left-hand side of the pages where the sculptures have the original drawing that I started with. And then the other side, they have the finished work and have that kind of interpretation of it. Yeah, so then the machine, I have a material called HDU. It's called high-density urethane is what it is. And it's 2 inches thick and 4 feet by 8 feet. It's like a big sheet of plywood, but 2 inches thick. And it's a material that was made to be sculpted into signs, which is kind of what I'm making. But it works really well with this machine. There's a router bit on the end of this arm, and it goes back and forth like an inkjet printer, except it can go up and down pieces out. Amazing to watch this block of material be carved into what you sculpted on the computer screen.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a really great process. And it's so much fun because it really looks like it. And then taking it from the screen, which is usually not that big, to like this 4-foot wide thing is also little edges and all kinds of things you didn't quite see. Okay, and then we finish it, we sand it. I have someone who helps me sand it and get it all kind of polished up. And then it gets sprayed with a primer. And then it gets sprayed again with some color. I use like flash paint sometimes or other and then some of them get surfaced with Formica, which is like a countertop material if I want really flat color. But oftentimes I'll come back with pastels or acrylics, and then I'll use the same technique of improvisation to work over the top. So I bring the hand back onto the top and kind of reactivate it after going through all that digital process.
Right. So how much do they weigh?
Yeah, the beauty is that the HDU is made to be much lighter than wood, so they're not that heavy. I can pick them up, but 2 people just because they're a little wide and it's hard to handle. But let's say maybe 40 pounds, 30, 40 pounds. They're not that heavy.
Yeah, no, not bad at all.
Yeah, if it was made out of wood, it would probably be 200 pounds, something like that. But that's why I choose the material. It has a lot of good properties. That material is much lighter, much less dense, so it helps in the weight of the piece. You can have a much bigger piece for much lighter, but it helps when you're carving because the bit doesn't have to go through, wood with grain, which tears up the bit and puts wear and tear on the motors. It just kind of goes. So that's really good. And the material doesn't crack like wood does sometimes. And it doesn't change size at temperature, which also wood expands and contracts and takes in moisture. It doesn't do any of that. So the painted surfaces, won't expand and contract, and it preserves that surface very nice.
Right. Well, as you were describing the process, I thought about how you, the artist, have your tools to get the idea through. But the universe somehow, by those repeated images that come out of your drawing, you become the tool as well.
Yes.
To put the ideas out there.
Perfect. Yes, and I believe that too. Yeah, and I think part of the practice is getting out of the way and letting that happen. So a lot of the I call mindfulness like a cross training for art. You can because oftentimes there's a lot of doubt in artist's mind, like and a little bit of fear. Why am I spending this money? We'll never sell this. I'm wasting my life. So the mindfulness can really calm the anxiety. I love that about it. It can really like let those go. And the other thing is like you think like where do my ideas come from? Like you can use the mindfulness to look into who you are as a person and discover things about yourself. Yeah. And also the creativity, once you get into it and you learn to let go and you're like really engaged in the drawing, then you're meditating and you start to get the benefits of meditation as well. So it feeds back to itself very nicely.
Absolutely. So, I mean, my next question you sort of answered earlier about Inner Hole and Sandra Gehring Gallery. But this work came out of the pandemic. How have you seen your work evolve? Because we kind of jumped from way back 1999 until the present. But what have been the markers you think of how your work?
Yeah, well, mostly the work, the sculptural work was done, but really before it had all been decided, and like I said, it was almost finished. But after that, I mean, I went into a time, and I didn't know if the gallery was going to ever reopen. You never know if people can't pay their rent, if they're not working. So there was a lot of that. And so it was really an open-ended time. And I have to say, it's amazing to just kind of be sitting there, not having any plan for months and months. And so that really helped the software because there was no direct goal. There was no deadline, and things just got very open. And if you look at iClock.com, which is the site where I post my drawings, and you look, it's kind of a calendar form, so you can look at February of 2020, and then you go to April, and when you get to May, you'll start to see color come in, and you'll start to see that I'm spending now hours on the drawing instead of an hour or half an hour. That I have much more time, and not only that, but the time is like so much more relaxed. So in June and July, of 2020
Mhm.
are so rich. It's like, and I feel like I was on like a retreat, I was on like a meditation retreat for 3 months.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I was home, which isn't so different. Like my day to day, like what I do, going from the house to the studio and back and forth was kind of the same. But the outlook of what was going to happen, because I had no idea when this show was going to happen or if it was going to happen or if I had to find a new gallery or who knows what. So that was all kind of open and floating around in my mind, but also freed me up because there was really nothing demanding my time. And then my kids were, there was no school. They weren't in person in school, and my wife wasn't going into an office or anything. So when I go back home, instead of being kind of by myself all day, there was a family and this whole life was going on. So in some ways it got richer in a way. Like there was a richer family life, and there was a kind of a more relaxed atmosphere. So that was a really interesting summer that way. I mean, I'm certainly sensitive to and felt sorry for and worried about the people that are suffering and would want to wish them the best for sure. And there were people we knew around here that had it, and a relative of mine passed away from COVID. And so we're not unscathed. But on the other hand, I mean, that space, that open space is available to us all the time if we just look for it, if we have to come in, put our cares aside, or manage to slow down. Yeah, to manage to slow down. So it did have that effect. And I think it enriched the drawing quite a bit. And I still don't know what to do with those works from those months. I'm thinking about ways of showing them. But for the moment, the software came out, and it's kind of a mourning. It's kind of a more somber piece for me because it's on this black rectangle. And I think it reflected the mood that was going on, and everyone was kind of in that kind of somber mood, but also the depth of thought, like the blackness can be a down place, but it can also be a luminous place, right?
Absolutely. So iClock.com, I'm going to look at that after because I didn't get a chance to look at it before. And you pretty much answered my last question about how life has changed for you upstate. I mean, is there anything else you wanted to add specifically that I didn't address? I go ahead and I make drawings every day. That's what I do. I mean, I would say I hope people will wear masks. That's really, and I just don't know why people won't. That really, and up here, you'd think in New York is very enlightened. But out here in the more rural parts of the state, it's like when in Louisiana where I grew up, it's still like that. I mean, this has been an amazing year. It's been an eye-opening year as far as learning about people. Yes. And how long is the show up at David Richard
The
Gallery?
show will be through November 8th. Yeah.
Okay. So when I get up, I will send you a link. So we'll get this podcast out in the next.
That's terrific. And I will do my best to publicize it. I'm sure David Richard will put it out online. And
yes. And we'll all be very happy to see this inspiring work. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. And I wish you all the best. I can't wait to come upstate. Uri invited me once or twice, summer or two ago. And now things are a little bit more complicated, but I promise if we come during this time to wear masks.
Absolutely. Come up and see. Well, see the show up in Harlem in East if you can, because all the work is there right now. But and of course you're always welcome here. We have a pool in the summer, and we'll make you a big meal. Life is kind of pleasant up here.
Yes. I heard about the barbecue.
The barbecue. Yeah, Yuri came up and we had took him around to the wineries around here, everything.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, thank you. I'm so grateful he introduced us, and look forward to seeing you.
Okay, thank you, Nicolette. Okay.
Take care, John.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for joining us on yet another episode of the Bees and Honey podcast. I hope you enjoyed listening to John speak about his work, and I hope you make it to the gallery in East Harlem to see his current exhibition. Have a great week.